Hello, one more time from San Diego, or at least one more time for this San Diego Comic Con 2023 from San Diego. We are recording super late here, so apologies to those that wanted to watch live and are probably long asleep as we're here on a late Sunday night, nearing close to midnight here. But um, as is the case with Comic Con, sometimes things get away from us and it's hard to kind of schedule these things. And so, that said, hopefully, if you're listening, whether it's live or on replay or audio only, we'll talk about our Sunday because that's what's next on the agenda. But also, we're going to talk a little bit about just some of the things that kind of stuck with us as we're looking at this year going into 2024. We do that every year for I don't know how many years now we've done this, but always kind of trying to look at, like, okay, what are things we noticed this year that might help us to understand next year better. So we will kind of dive into that as we go. Our start of the day, one of the big kind of goals was to get the wristband for the signing at Dark Horse for David Dismalchian, and we fortunately were able to do that. And so, although the signing came up later in the day, we can kind of just talk about it now because the wristband was a priority in the morning. For those that haven't done Dark Horse before, well, we've already talked about on the last podcast that just Dark Horse was gone, they came back. The booth to me was one of the highlights of the entire convention, just the way they ran it between the swag and the carpeting and the signings and all of that. But they ran the lotteries for their wristbanded signings because they also had signs like we got Eric Powell and that was not wristbanded, it was just show up. But Desmalchian, who was polka dot man in Suicide Squad and was in Ant-Man, and he's been Dark Knight, he's been in a bunch of movies there. He was a much more popular get, and so it was a much longer line, and that was kind of like my main stop in the morning. Picked up an Ahsoka poster, did it as a drop giveaway later on to help somebody out, but made it over there. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so the way it works is you get in line for the wristband, and it is kind of random. They have a little like iPad sitting there, and you double click, and they said that if you so it's basically is it a
A die.
20-sided
Mm-hmm.
die that kind of
Yep.
used like for Dungeons and Dragons, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And if you had a 13 or higher, you got a wristband, and if it was below that, you didn't. And you went through first.
I went through twice. I didn't get it the first time. Got right back in line because there was only like 10 people and they had like five wristbands. So I'm like, okay, 50-50 shot. Got to the front, got like a 17, so I got my wristband and was like, okay, the signing is going to happen now. And this one, in full disclosure, was kind of one of my main targets of the weekend. From the second Dark Horse came out, I knew Dark Horse was going to watch like what their signing schedule was, and this was one that I was interested in because we saw Dismelchian at
Amazing
Amazing
Las
Las
Vegas.
Vegas, and he had a panel and was like fantastic on the panel. And so already being interested in his characters, hearing about his panel, he was so good because he's like such a comic fan, such a pop culture fan, and just a very interesting guy. He's a great panelist. And so after that, I'm like, okay, I need to recount Crowley, and I need to someday get this guy's signature. And I thought maybe we'll see him at Comic Con. Now, this is before we had any clue, or at least I had any clue, that there was going to be a strike and there wouldn't be much talent there at all. So, was not surprised that he was there because he was there not in his acting role. He was there as a comic book writer and signing his comic books. But I was very glad to get the wristband. But you also got it, and you got it on your first try.
Yeah, you told me where you were, and I don't remember where I was running around at the time. And I went and met you over there, and you're like, they're doing the drawing. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, should I get in line? And you're like, I don't know, it's up to you. And I'm like, well, I did enjoy his panel as well, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to like actually, obviously it'd be a brief chat, but like kind of meet him and stuff and get. If you've listened, I'm not generally big on autographs, but again, he was so interesting in his panel and stuff that I got in line and I figured we'll see. And I think as I was approaching the iPad, they said that there was two left.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and so I double clicked and I got, I don't even remember, I think a 16 or something like that. And so I got a wristband, and then there was one left, and I'm not sure who got it after me, but it was cool. And I had my wristband, and then so we came back later and had that interaction.
Yeah, and he was super nice. I was a little concerned because having seen him at Amazing Las Vegas Comic Con, he was very talkative with fans, which is nice, very personable. But I noticed he take a lot of time there because he was signing. And so in his signing there, he was taking a long time. Now there, everybody was paying him $50 each, I think was what he was charging for autographs. So it also makes sense that there's like one less people, and two, you might be more personable if somebody's giving you $50. Here though, there was the big line, and so like, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 people, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how long is this going to take? But he was actually really good at he was very personable, very nice, but also very efficient in his signing. So he seemed to approach it very differently being at the Dark Horse booth, which was welcomed and ended up being a really great experience.
Yeah, in answer to the question, I think theoretically we would love to sign it, or I'm
Sign.
sorry, frame it. There was a question if we were going to have the signature framed.
Oh, okay.
And but we'll see if we do. We have a stack of stuff that we want to get framed, and we haven't yet. So theoretically, yes. Ideally, yes. But I don't know when that'll actually happen. But yeah, as far as the interaction, it was really cool. I went first, I think, and I kind of brought up the Amazing Las Vegas panel. He's like, "Oh yeah, that was fun. They, just gave me a mic and let me just talk." And I went, "Well, that was great, and we really enjoyed it, and we appreciate whatever." And he seemed receptive, and obviously he signed my stuff, and then he signed yours, and we did buy a trade paperback and a comic book
Mm-hmm.
because they had those for sale at the autograph counter, and so we had the poster signed and then the two books signed.
Yeah. And to clarify on that, for those that might want to do Dark Horse in 2024, if they're there and doing signs like that, is they do have prints or posters that are free. The signature's free. Everything's free. But you can also make the choice to buy something to sign or bring something there to have signed. And so, with that in mind, we ended up buying the books. I wanted to get the book anyway, and it's like, okay, let's support him for being here and all that stuff. And so, that's how we did it that way. So, again, Dark Horse to me was one of my favorite booths of the year, just because I was shocked that they came back in such a good fashion. Because again, I guess it still bothers me how after the pandemic, so many of these big companies have not come back. And I'm not talking about just Comic Con, but just general, so many things have not come back. A lot of them, did get hit hard by the pandemic, but others have also used it as a crutch and have kind of used it as a reason to cut costs or treat people a little less good or things like that. And so seeing Dark Horse back on the floor was great, and then them having a really good booth and one that was just every bit as good as 2019 was
The
fantastic.
carpet was the really
Yeah,
thick
thick
plush
carpet.
carpet. So when we were waiting in line, because uh, the Salchin showed up, I think like 10 minutes later, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And then they went through the ADA individuals first. And then so we got there early for the signing. So we had a decent amount of time that we were in line, but I did not mind it so much. And you were able to
It's
sit
comfy.
for a good part of it. So really appreciated the really plush carpet. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, the booth looked like physically the setup seemed, if I recall correctly, pretty much exactly as it was in 2019.
yeah, yeah. If we did like awards, which we don't, like Dark Horse would be my number one booth, and for different reasons and stuff like that. But now preceding that, so
Well, after
after
the
getting the
wristband,
wristband, but
before
before
the
the actual
autograph.
signing, but preceding that was the Hasbro selfie series. So Hasbro gifted both of us an opportunity to get one of the selfie figures made. So full disclosure, when they announced the selfie series, which the idea is that you're basically making an action figure of yourself. So you could be a stormtrooper, an X-wing
So
fighter,
it's
Black
mostly putting
Widow,
your head on one of the
one of their
standard
current bodies,
bodies.
yeah.
Yeah.
I had no, I don't know, maybe I was a weird kid or I'm still weird with stuff, but I've never really had interest in like having an action figure of myself. It's never really been, but I do get that it's a big deal for a lot of people, but I never was really that interested. Then when I saw the people that got them, the sculpts did not look great to me. A lot of really soft features in the heads. They just didn't look great. I know they've improved it since then, but anyway, they gifted it to us. We had a 10:30 a.m. appointment. It was a half hour before the Count Crowley Desmalchian signing, so we got over there. They got us in pretty quick, and we were able to get in there and get our selfie figures done. And so the process, we don't have the figures here because they'll be shipped to us eventually, so we'll see what they end up looking like. Everything was app based. They had extra like lights out. You can do it yourself in the Hasbro Pulse app, and there's a selfie series version. The entirety of it ended up being, I think it was going to be $75, and we're Pulse members, so it would have been free shipping. So we'll see. To me, the image on the phone. So I had mine. I was gonna do a Ghostbuster, but I'm like, well, I guess if I'm only gonna do this once in my life, like the Stormtrooper is what kind of makes sense. But also, like the Stormtrooper puts their helmet on, and you don't with this figure. So I don't know. I did go with the Stormtrooper. I didn't feel like what I saw in the app looked very much like me at all after getting their help and trying to pick, the right hair texture and the right facial hair and the right skin tone. But
So
they
yeah,
also said it would be
basically,
different when you get, like, the hair would be darker when you get it. So we'll see. We'll be the judge of it when we get the actual figure.
yeah. So the app, it's like you held the phone like in front of your face, and there's like a little shape on there too. That you put the front of your face, and then you like turn left, and then back to center, and then right. And so really, that image or the personalization in that way is really just that part. And then in the app, as Sean said, you select the. I think you can adjust the skin tone, and you can select the hair, and if there's accessories like glasses and facial hair and stuff. And so uh, all of those are just kind of, well, not kind of, they're pre-made, and you just kind of pick the ones that you out of, whatever the selection is. So really, it's just the face that's more personalized. And so yeah, we both did that, and it
Yeah.
didn't take too
Yeah.
long, but they did
No,
help
it's
us.
pretty
And
quick. Yeah, like 5 to 10 minutes. But the latest version now allows you to add like glasses, and so there's some differences now to kind of update it some. But we'll see, what it ends up looking like. But it was nice that they gifted us. We did it. It was a quick experience, but don't have a lot to comment on here because we don't have the figures to see what they look like. But we'll post them when we get them, and people can see and judge for themselves. Another thing for the day in terms of picking up is we did find our own, like, we do all these prize drops, but we never really get prizes. Like, we get stuff from booths, like, when we find them, but like, we found our own prize drop because somebody just didn't want this poster and it was just dropped off for this print. So Strange New Worlds, love the show on Paramount Plus. They had a really great poster at the booth, which at one point I got in line to get, and then I got out of line because it was taking too long. And so it was neat just kind of stumbling upon it. So I guess somebody waited in line and decided they didn't want the poster. So that was just kind of a fun find out on the mezzanine level. It was just laying on the ground off to the side there. Another thing, visited over in the we talked about the IDW booth I think yesterday, but we made our way through Artist Alley. And one of the things that caught my eye, and I always try to get somebody's signature in Artist Alley, I feel like every year, is kind of just a goal because they have so many great comic creators. Most conventions we go to that have comic creators, a major part of it is getting signings from creators. It's much less so at San Diego just because there's so much else going on. And I feel like, well, we'll see them at Comic Con Revolution, or we'll see them at Long Beach Comic Con, or we'll see them at some other show. But this time around, did get Star Trek. So if you're not familiar, we talked about in the last episode, Star Trek from IDW. They are doing some really fun stuff right now with a lot of the legacy characters, and they're kind of creating their whole own universe, kind of their own, like, for lack of a better term, their MCU, but of comics with IDW. And uh, Kelly and Lanzine are kind of the architects of everything. And I've loved the books, and so visited with them real quick. You had actually dropped stuff on the car, and I had thought about, like, I should just get them to sign something. So I went and bought the book for $15, got them to sign it, talked to them for a few minutes. They both started going to Comic Con in 2005 as well, so that was awesome that they were, like, we started going to Comic Con at the same time, and we started talking about the before times, before Twilight versus the after times of what Twilight, kind of how it changed the convention and just brought a broader pop culture light to it and stuff. So it's just nice talking to them. It was quick, it was easy, but like having talent like that just sitting in Artist Alley all day is like one of the really rare treats about Comic Con, because there's so many great guests there from all over the world, although they're more local, but just all over the world come there.
yeah, definitely. Um, just a quick thing in regards to questions and stuff, like the offsites and stuff. We'll come back to that, but let us kind of run through our days so we can kind of keep things as efficient as possible time wise, because it's late and we're tired. But then because it is related, there was a question about ever having
Signings, and
had
just
Stanley
Stanley
sign.
signed Stanley signed my arm. So for those that are watching on YouTube, he signed my arm and had it made into a tattoo. So that's actually his signature. He grabbed my arm, signed it with a surgical pen that we got from a tattoo artist, and then we ran down the street a mile or half mile or something like that to get it tattooed in. But also had him sign several books. We probably got like, I don't know, 6 or 7 things over the years signed from Stanley. So yeah, he was a highlight of my life to actually to get signed, to have signed some things. Okay, and then I think this, well, actually, just real quick, got a great Planet of the Apes hat, or great to me. It's not often see Planet of the Apes merchandise in general. And you actually found the hat from, what was it,
10 ton
10 Ton
press.
Press. Yeah, 10 Ton Press. They were in the area, and they had a green Planet of the Apes hat with a version of Zaius and Urko and
Cornelius? No.
Cornelius on it, and it was just a fun find
Yeah,
there.
as we were
And
walking by, because we were just, I don't remember where we're going. As we're walking, I'm like, I did a double take. I'm like, wait, is that a Planet of the Apes hat? I'm like, I think you need to get this. And they were charging $25, which seemed very reasonable for a hat. And so that was a cool find.
yeah. And one more thing before we talk, and so now we'll start to kind of bridge like some of the things we picked up at the end of the day. I think ties into like looking at San Diego Comic Con for 2024 from at least a lot of things we do off sites. We've already had a question about that, tying to that, the floor panels, things of that nature. But did want to thank a very kind gift that was given to us at San Diego this year. And so it's a compass from the Camp Snoopy store, and super cute. Love Snoopy, love Camp Snoopy. And so some very kind listeners, followers.
John and Ash.
Yeah, John Ash gave us this and said that we were like their Comic Con compass, and so I thought that was really sweet of them and super nice. And I love it because it just like it fits with something we're really interested in. So love that piece of swag. So okay, let's talk a little bit about then some of the booths and some of the things that kind of tie into the basically the end of the con, which I think leads into a lot of things. So what we found, and we were there from the very beginning. We were there obviously days before Comic Con began. If anybody's like a new listener, we were there weeks actually, coming out once a week since the beginning of June, watching everything be built. And then we were like right in the last people to leave. Like they closed. Carmel was doing a live. It's on our YouTube channel if you want to see it. And what we notice is a lot of different things, but one of the things that jumped out to me a lot is a lot of booths on Sunday at close still had a ton of exclusives left. And so in the world of exclusives, it's one of my favorite parts of the convention is that merchandise side. And so we did go around, we went to Entertainment Earth and we got a Boo Berry figure from Jada, which I think they revealed it maybe earlier at Anime Expo, but loved that. Picked up
And
the
this one's just a debut.
debut. Picked up the sketch edition McFarlane Batman Who Laughs, which is like this is probably the quintessential bad Comic Con purchase in some way. It's a debut sticker as well. I love the Batman Who Laughs. Love his look or his design. It's got a cool sketch box, but at the end of the day, I don't know like where this really fits in the collection or where we have a place to put it, but it was like we can get it. We're at Comic Con. We haven't really bought much this whole week, and it's right here, and it's $33, and let's get it. So we'll see if what ends up happening with it ultimately. And then also picked up from the Funko Rewind booth. They had quite a bit left with no line at the end of the day, and so we picked up Christmas Vacation, the Clark Griswold. Thought was super cute from their line, but more than just the individual items we picked up is by far of all the Comic Cons we've attended in the last decade, there was more exclusives left sitting on Sunday with places with no lines. NECA had everything but 2 of their Hero Clicks available at close. Mattel had everything but 3 or 4 items, and of those, only one of them was actually sold out. Like the Spielberg figure was like you could buy it online. So the only thing that was really sold out was the Monster High doll. And this was consistent across so many booths. Even Funko at 415, 410 had a whole lot more pops there than I ever remember being there. Loungefly had 6 of the bags left. So over and over again, as we went by these booths, there was stuff left. I mean, there was tons of QR codes left for Hasbro. So like they just had a stack, like I don't know how many more they had from behind, but they had a stack that was at least like 3 inches high just sitting there. They had some posters and stuff too, but so those exclusives being available as well. Hallmark, they had everything but the pop Boba Fett.
Right.
and the Revan, which the Revan was a weird one because I guess it was supposed to be a celebration one. Then they started selling them online. We actually bought it online, but they brought a few to San Diego and they kept kind of going and things like that. And so they had the chrysanthemum, which I don't remember ever a Sunday at close Hallmark packing up Star Wars ornaments. So that was sitting there as well. So it was really interesting to see so much there. Now, in the end, maybe they're just running higher production numbers. Maybe people with the economy are buying less. But it was really interesting as I was looking at because like we did the pre-sale for Alf, the convention figure from NECA, and we have it coming. But then we were sitting there, it's like, well, I just want to buy it at the booth now, like, and take it home. Like, I'm not a fan of doing any online purchases for the exclusives. But, we do in some cases. And so it's interesting though, like looking at next year, I don't know personally that I'm going to bother with like any pre-sale stuff from something like it, whether it's a NECA or even if something jumped in like a Mattel. There is something to say, and especially like people flying. It makes a lot of sense if you want to just have it shipped to your house or things like that, or you don't want the hassle of waiting in line. But I know looking at kind of what we saw there, it was really kind of fascinating how much was there. And it wasn't just that it was there, it was most of it was available multiple days, and most of it was available with no wait, like pretty much zero wait in most of the cases. Funko is an exception there, but Mattel, we could have gone up and bought just about anything there at the end of the day. And as I said, Hasbro, the Vault store,
Jazzwares also had
Jazzwares
a
had
lot,
the
or had some stuff.
Halo. They had all the costumes there. Really, all they sold out of was the Squishmallows and the micro the Star Wars vehicles there. So yeah, now Jazzwares I know is a different topic, and this kind of relates also to looking at 2024. Is a lot of booths had a lot of issues. MetaZoo had a lot of issues. Jazzwares had a lot of issues. There were several booths that we heard.
UCC.
UCC had what we heard, and now in our case, we did not go for MetaZoo. We did not go for Jazzwares during the ball. We did get some stuff from them when they were died down, but we didn't go and fight it out there. And the same for UCC. So we did not have personal experience with that. That said, being on the floor, we hear from a lot of people and doing what we kind of do, and
Oh, and we saw,
we saw, yeah, yeah,
messiness around.
we saw it with Mattel as well. Portal wins, people winning the foil card and then showing up 5 minutes into their time slot or 10 minutes of time slot, and the foil cards were gone. They didn't get them. Posters that were supposed to be signed, not being signed. So there was a lot of. It was weird because one of the things for Comic Con 23 that will always stick with me if I think about it is it felt like there were many more challenges for the booths than I remember maybe ever. Just across the board, just a lot more challenges for booths. We talked in the last episode about the Paramount booth getting shut down, or Paramount Plus getting shut down because of their issues with the posters. There just was a lot more issues getting things into people's hands despite the portals and all of these different things. So what does that mean for next year? I mean, we will see, but two things for me is one, the fact that so much stuff was left over in general, and the fact that there was so many challenges makes me personally much less likely to go into 24 and be really super into trying to like line up on that first day or two. Somebody had just commented that UCC got it together, but I think they said Saturday, and we talk about that. And a lot of our prep stuff is like kind of the tough thing about the convention is a lot of times they problem solve, but this is all temporary, and they do figure it out by Saturday. But if you were in there for preview night, you maybe didn't have that opportunity. I know we had a few people reach out that were upset with Jazzwares that they changed the limits of how many, because they had an interesting thing with their exclusives where it was like you can get 3 total of our exclusives, not 3 of each one or something, or the 2, and they would change the numbers. And so a lot of or not a lot of, but some of the preview night people and some of the Thursday people had kind of voiced their discontent about that. Is like, well, when I went there I was limited to this, and then they changed it, and it's like in the end they all play by their own rules, they're all their own companies. But it was a really messy, and it's so weird because we knew it was going to be messy with the lack of celebrities, and we thought that it would be messy, busier on the floor, busier on the offsites, and maybe it was. I mean, at times it felt more. I don't know if all in all I felt it was that much worse than a regular Comic Con year. But what felt much worse is just independently so many booths really struggling with their own procedures, which I think ties into something else, which we'll get to in a second, related to like other operational issues. But is that like, do I feel off? I mean, I know you and I have talked about this, but what do you think on that?
About what aspect? I mean, the booths were
Mm-hmm.
messy, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm curious as to what you're referring to that we're going to get to one of the possible reasons. But I mean, just in general, and I don't know if it's a countrywide thing, a worldwide thing, or if it's a Southern California thing, but we see it all over the place, whether it's fast food locations or other conventions or movie theaters. It just feels like, um, I don't know, maybe that it feels like lots of places are having trouble keeping qualified staff on hand,
Yeah.
and that, again, I don't know how widespread that is, but I mean, whether it's, security, or having temporary help for a 4.5 day or whatever day convention. I don't know. I mean, it just feels like staffing all over the place in these types of jobs is struggling, and so I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
What are you
No,
getting at,
I
or
think that, well, so now to bridge that, 'cause another thing that came up and was there was challenges with security. There was a lot of changes in procedures. Some things small, some things bigger. We saw a new team of security coming in on Saturday, and they were kind of getting like an orientation on the walk through the garage. And the lead was very thankful to them for coming in, when I think, the quote, not exact words, but sort of like, when so many people won't come into work. And so obviously there is a challenge, as said, I mean, just as a country, with like people making a living wage and people getting paid, a survivable rate. And we're seeing a lot of unrest. Obviously there's things with writer strike and actor strike and all these things, but I think what we're starting to see with conventions is like more and more of that's going to hit, and people want to go, we all want to go and just kind of forget about the real world and be in San Diego and have this great time, but at the end they're staffed by people that this is how they're trying to put food on their table. And if places, and I don't know what the exact rates are with these things or anything, but there was just definitely a sense that a lot of the booths were not fully up and running. They weren't, a lot of the people weren't trained as well, all these individual companies that were there for whatever reason. And we know that can always be a struggle. But also, I mean, there was a lot of run-ins with security that we witnessed. We didn't personally have, I mean, we got yelled at a few times because,
we're
you gotta
sitting in the
walk,
wrong
yeah,
area, or
or where everybody's walking, but they were still yelling like, keep walking. It's like, so there was things like that. But in terms of like actual interactions, we did witness a lot of like like, I mean, this morning somebody was like, what time does the floor open? And the person just like shrugged at them and like didn't, like, I have no clue when this
like
show
she
opens.
literally just
Just physically
shrugged.
shrugged and kind of walked away. And we heard lots of kind of cussing and like kind of berating in negative ways of customers and guests. And so
Well, and
it's
employees
complicated,
too.
yeah. And so it's very complicated. Obviously, it's these temporary shows we talk about all the time. It's so difficult because they're just there for a week, and it is what it is. But I think these are kind of challenging environments where like the real world leaks into your fantasy world, or for those of us going to Comic Con, it's our fantasy world, and it does create challenges there. So I would like to say some of this in terms of like the booths and their personnel is maybe like, well, because the celebrities weren't there, maybe some of the booths pulled back a little with their staffing and kept some people back at the home base. And I think that may be the case for some publicists and some executives and things like that. But I don't think that's why, Mattel seemed to have a little bit less of a strong team there at certain times when we were, of some of the stories we would hear about the booth and some of the struggles there. So it's something though that what I think it makes as we look at 24, because I take notes every year of like for our guides next year and try to help people. But what I kept feeling like is like, what are we going to really talk about in 24 except being ready to pivot.
Flexible.
Yeah, asking lots of questions, being ready to pivot, and yeah, being
Trying to be
flexible.
kind,
Yeah.
because in the end, I mean, we're all, the employees are just trying to get through their day. We're trying to have a good time, and in the end, I mean, obviously there were these weird situations, but overall it felt like a normal Comic-Con in regards to people's attitudes. And I
Yeah.
think we've talked about it before. It's like we all spend so much money to get down here. We make up whatever sacrifices to be there. We, leave our pets at home, um and all of those things. And so most of us, once we get there, it's like we just want to enjoy it, like whatever whether the actors are there or not, we're going to have a good time because we spent so much to get here and all these things. And so it, in that sense, it, felt the
Yeah, I
same
agree.
despite the various minor issues. I don't know. It,
Yeah.
again, just weird.
They're just, it was, I think what particularly made it strange is like we knew that the celebrity side was going to be different. So we were all, I think, braced for that. And then we just came out of the pandemic closures. So we expected a lot more memory loss, muscle memory loss last year. And it felt like a lot of things ran, a lot of booths seemed to run a little smoother in last year. A lot of, security seemed a little smoother. Not that there weren't still challenges. There's always going to be challenges with a crazy big convention like this, but it was just really interesting that it felt like a lot of those things kind of hit this year, at least from the people we heard and our own experiences as well, uh, much harder. So again, and I feel like it becomes a broken record that it does become so important to be ready to pivot and to change. And so it's like I wanted to get the Boo Berry figure, but I didn't win the lottery for Entertainment Earth, and I wasn't gonna battle to try to talk my way in, or when they opened it and there was all these people. So I just basically was gonna wait and see. And if I didn't get it, I didn't get it. Maybe I'd get it online, and if I did, I did. And so in the end, it was an easy thing to get, but it took waiting till Sunday. So I think that's something you know more so for next year is the hardcore collectors or the people that really love to the collectibles. I think more and more we have to accept that we might just end up getting it online, or we might just end up getting it on Sunday. Now, if we're only coming one day, if we only have a Thursday badge, then that doesn't. And it almost becomes like its own strategy of like if you are somebody that only wants to come to Comic Con for one day, because we know people like that, they just want to do their one day there, and you're a collector, it might be a better call to come on Sunday than like Thursday. I mean, some stuff's going to be sold out, but we also know a lot of the stuff that sells out. Like if you look at Funko Pops from the Funko booth a year ago, and you go onto eBay right now and look up, Funko SDCC 2022, you can pick up a lot of them, the vast majority of them at pretty good prices. Not all of them for sure. Some things escalate a lot over the years and stuff, but it's not quite as do or die. In the old days, like, when Hasbro did their big Death Star vintage collection set, it's like if you didn't get that at the con, it just kept going up and up and up and up, and now it's like $3,000, and you're just like, what do I do? But more and more, since they've gone with so many online sales, just find the market is a bit more flooded, and it's just a little bit easier to kind of sit on some of these things and come back to them in a few years, which has its good and its bad to it, but it's interesting there. On the offsite side, and maybe let's actually go to some of our questions now because we can kind of tie in there, because there was a question on the offsites, but maybe actually before we get that, let's go back through. So I don't like this lottery system. We need to get rid of it. They didn't open Funko on the public. The whole back corner was off limits. I mean, I am not a lottery fan either, and honestly, more years than not, we've gotten pretty lucky with it. And I always say like, because like a year like this year where we didn't win anything, then it becomes like it's well, of course I have sour grapes. That's why I don't like the lottery. But in the years that we've won the lottery, I still would, if I had a vote, would vote against it. I understand why they do it, and I don't think they're ever going to go away from it. But I just always, I think we talked about this on last episode, so I won't go too long into that.
Yeah, I mean, last year I lucked out and won the lottery for Funko, and I had the first time slot on Thursday, which was amazing. And we appreciated it, and we were able to, buy stuff we wanted and buy stuff for friends and buy stuff and we traded and all these things. So it was like this incredible, like, just the problem will never happen again, lucky thing. But would we have camped out for it? Like if the lottery system wasn't there, no, and someone else who did care more about it would have been, I think we would have been fine with that because we would have made that decision. So yeah, we're not, although as you said, we've been lucky from time to time. It's, we understand both sides of it, and in the end, yeah, we prefer that these things not be lotteries. And if someone's willing to camp out for days for these things, seems like they should be able to and should be able to get these things. But yeah, we they're not going anywhere though.
A couple more comments there. Mattel didn't have any Barbies with the movie out. That was odd. Totally agree. We just talked about this at dinner with our friends. Like it was so weird because looking at it from months out, it's like Barbie is going to be huge at Mattel or just at Comic Con. It's going to be huge this year, the movie out and everything. And then it just was not huge. Like Barbie was a very minimal presence, and I am shocked. I mean, I would have bet all my future Comic Con badges that they would have had a Barbie exclusive, if not like a different Barbie exclusive every day. They didn't, and that's, I guess, again, that kind of goes back to like just some odd stuff with like some. There's just some odd choices. Like, how did Mattel look at having a Barbie movie out and look at having one of the biggest marketing events of the year with Comic Con and not want to sell Barbies? Because I think they would have sold a lot of Barbies to
Well, I
people.
think one of the comments that came up in that conversation today was like almost the expectation being that there would be a different Barbie exclusive like every day, or a different type of Barbie, or like we all were expecting these like Barbie representation, and just wasn't there.
It just wasn't there. Okay, there was
So in
also,
regards to what do companies do with overstock? I
it
think
does
is the
off, yeah, it goes on. They definitely will sell it, and that's one of the things I think that maybe is happening more and more with exclusives too. Is it's just that they are overproducing them with the plan. I mean, we know Hasbro does that. We know some are more likely to do that, but I think more and more maybe that's becoming the plan. Is like, let's just overproduce it rather than it going for such an inflated price on eBay. Let's let people buy it from us and sell it that way. Downside is obviously is that kind of minimizes the exclusivity of it, and it has a possibility of kind of making people not want to collect the thing, because as collectors we want things that are a little bit difficult to get. We ideally oftentimes don't want them so difficult that we can't get them, but we do want there to be some value there that it's a little bit tough to get. Exclusives weren't really exclusive since everyone can get them. Yeah, that's, I mean, I totally hear that. Is when I know something is going to be just kind of sitting there and it just doesn't quite do the same thing for me. Sideshow Collectibles pulled out. Now, what's interesting with that, and somebody else had commented about Artist Alley being too small. I mean, there's so many incredible artists in Artist Alley, but it is so claustrophobic there. But what was interesting was Sideshow not being there. I didn't, well, I missed seeing Sideshow. I mean, I missed seeing the statues and all that, but it didn't really feel like we were like missing that booth in terms of like open space or anything. Like,
the
obviously they
floor was still
filled it,
very
yeah.
full.
And it wasn't, because I had thought when Sideshow pulled out, maybe we'll see Artist Alley, not specifically Artist Alley, but just some of these areas spread out a little bit more. And maybe there was some of that, but it felt like, you know, the waiting list is long enough to get into Comic Con that it filled up pretty fast in there.
And there was a comment about us doing an unboxing when we get the Marvel selfie
Oh,
figures.
okay. Yeah, we should do something like that. Yeah, we'll definitely. I mean, I don't know how long it takes to get the figure, so they didn't tell us that. I'm sure it's on the website and I just missed it. But yeah, I don't know if it's like a few weeks or a few months, but we'll see and follow up with that when the time comes.
And then James commented about
Cosplay,
cosplay Barbie.
yeah, yeah.
That would
I
have
mean,
been fun.
you know, that was, I mean, so we do expect this from like smaller conventions where a lot of times like cosplayers really bear the weight of kind of theming things up or bringing the energy sometimes. But this year it felt like, because Mattel chose not to really do anything with Barbie, that it was on the cosplayers, and there were so many great cosplay Barbies. One of my favorite of the weekend was seeing the Spider-Man and Spider-Gwen Barbies, and it was Barbie and Ken, and it was just like into the Spider-Verse or into the Barbie-verse. It was like, what a fun take on the Barbie characters and stuff. But I can't believe we didn't see Barbie banners everywhere, and you know, a Barbie offsite and everything else.
And then there's other than Hasbro, where else can you line up for a free giveaway? So actually, the freebies and stuff is another part of the conversation,
Yeah,
I guess. So.
yeah. So that's a perfect segue. There is, this was also, and we've talked about like swag has just diminished for years on the floor. That's been a thing. I mean, in the old days, you know, 7 8 years ago, you'd walk away with a T-shirt or two every day, and that was just the start of things. And this year, much less. That final time, like when Carmel does her live, I go around and usually there's booths like dumping posters that they've given away so many posters, but they've got so many more to give away, or they've got prints, or they've got lanyards, and it's like that last 10 minutes this year was the first time in all the years of doing this that I really didn't pick up like any. I picked up they had a Tops digital card that they're like, this is exclusive. I don't even know if it's true or not. I'll see, I'll look into it later, but like, so I basically got a QR code. I know that's one thing you and I talked about. Is like I'd be so good with never getting a QR code from a booth at Comic Con again. And I know we're going to get a lot more of them in the future, but just so many booths with here's our postcard with some art on it, and scan this and get a discount or get a free month of streaming or get, and it's just like, to me that's not really swag, or it's not like fun. Now conversely, and we had a question about like favorite off sites and things like that, I feel like we keep seeing kind of bigger and better swag a lot of times at the offsites. And kind of an interesting change that we've seen over the years is the offsites have kind of, like when we started getting offsites, it was like, oh, they themed, they have the sci-fi cafe, and we've got a little bit of theming there, and it was like cool. And there was like, okay, there's a cool little booth in Petco, cool. And now, over the years we've had things like Castle Rock or Severance. This year, the Anime Ham. I mean, that was a massive experience, all things considered. Interview with a Vampire. That was a big experience, and so they're big experiences with like big swag. And I know we showed that on a past video and talked about on a past podcast during this week, but like Anime Ham, when you get out and you get like an actual backpack and poster, so it feels like a lot of the best swag is like the off-site stuff at this point, but it also requires a big time commitment. Everything I think on swag these days is about time commitment. There's so few of just like grab these. Now, to the person who had asked about just getting free stuff, for those, I mean, the Ahsoka prints at the Lucasfilm Pavilion booth were awesome, and those were great to get. The Star Trek, like I said, the Star Trek Strange New World, I like, just was a really long line. That looked great. Dark Horse constantly had lanyards and things like that, but even
pens and pins.
but yeah, but even like over at like previews, like the previews booth is not a booth that's necessarily like hot on everyone's list for like freebies, but they've always had a lot of freebies like wristbands and comics and pens and lanyards and all these things. And this year they had mostly, it was like every so often they would have spin the wheel, and you'd get in line and you'd spin the wheel and you'd get a prize. And it was like, well, this is a lot more involved. Hasbro's thing now, and I do think this is a problem with booths at Comic Con, is I feel like they're over planned now, and so everybody is like swarming them, because there used to be a real organic nature to things, which can cause its own problems and things. But it used to be like, hey, when are they going to give the bags out? Well, just check back; it'll happen later. Now, like if you go to the Hasbro booth, the digital board has like what is happening every 15 to 30 minutes at the booth, and you have people lining up, a half hour before to get the poster or whatever it is. And so it creates a lot more jamming. They're all in a line, and it's, I guess, fire marshal approved, but that walkway, I mean, you and I talked about every time you went near Hasbro, it was just like a swirling mass of humanity, in the way that it used to be to get exclusives. But there's no exclusives now. It's just people kind of trying to see product or get in line for a free poster or something.
Well, they take up some. The booth, we talked about it already, I think yesterday. But the Hasbro booth, it's like they're cramming so much stuff into this relatively small-ish. I mean, it's not like Artist Alley small, but relative to the big booths, it's a relatively small footprint. And they had a full-size car in there. They had a stage. They had the area for seats to do the selfie things. They had the Ghost HasLab on display, which was probably like what, a 4x4 table or something like that.
Big.
And then they have a lot of employees around. Again, good that they're there to discuss their products and stuff. But just if only the employees are in there, it's a pretty full booth. And then you throw in everybody else, and it is a challenging booth.
The selfie series guys were really over it by the end, because the catering came in and was like blocking off a passageway, and the guy said, man, I wish this would just stay here, because they kept kind of getting run over by people coming off of the stage. And I said this has got to be rough, because that's the thing with all this stuff, is we know, like, if we're hearing little issues at a booth, or if we're seeing little issues or little security things, like, the people that are really being impacted are the ones that are closest to it. So yeah, they were like, yeah, it's been a rough weekend with just kind of getting trampled by people, because it's such a tight booth. But when that booth existed years ago, they weren't displaying Indiana Jones, they weren't displaying Magic, they weren't displaying Dungeons and Dragons, Power Rangers. They've added all of these different properties and kept the same footprint. And it's just like, the math doesn't add up. There's not enough square footage there. And it's why we don't have like in the old days we would get these amazing dioramas from Marvel and Star Wars, and like a lot of people looked, that was like one of their Comic-Con traditions, is like, what's the diorama going to be for each of these things? And these years we don't get that. We just get kind of little glass cases with a couple figures out in them and stuff. And so, I don't see Hasbro putting the money in to get a bigger booth. But similarly, across the street there, you've got Mattel. They have not added quite as many licenses over the years, so it's a little bit better distributed. But even there, it's a little bit crowded as well. I guess that's as we see more and more of these companies kind of swallow up other companies, they kind of come together that way. But so if we were getting ready for Comic-Con 2024 right today, and somebody was saying, you know what, my number one thing is getting swag, what do you suggest? My suggestion right now would be is to commit to offsites. Well, obviously first it's to evaluate online. Are there people? It has the SDCC unofficial blog put out their information of what the giveaways are. That would be the first place to start. But after that, when we don't know, like we didn't know exactly what Anna Mayhem was going to give away, and then we're like, oh wow, 2 boxes of pins and a real backpack, like this is something. Then it becomes like, what my favorite thing to do is bounce around to a million different booths and see what little things you get. But if I was going to give somebody the advice and they're just out for swag, it'd be like, well, just go ahead and plow away 2 hours in line at one of these offsites and get a nice canvas bag with some items in it. And again, we'll see what comes in the future, but it's interesting because I think we've kind of moved. We had a period of time where everything was about experiences on the floor and a photo ops, and there still are photo ops, take a picture in the captain's chair and all that. But it feels like it's moved even more to like, here's our QR code, like here's our booth. We're selling some product that's going to help us pay for our booth. Maybe we have some costumes on display, but here's our QR code to do other stuff. But you don't really have as much, like DC used to give out all sorts of stuff, and DC kind of just isn't that anymore. I mean, again, glad that they're even back on the floor, but not the same thing. All right, let's hit some of these last questions here, and we'll start to wrap up soon here. Do you think CCI will be more strict with artist applicants, and artists got outed for selling AI generated stuff? That was interesting. Yeah, we had no clue that was a thing until I think somebody had retweeted that they did get kicked out for selling AI art. So I am fascinated by that topic, and I'm not sure what that really means. I don't know how they evaluate it. I don't know, but I'm curious. I mean, I guess I should say, yeah, I'm sure they're going to take a close look at it now, but I'm sure more to come on the world of AI in a lot of different ways at Comic-Con and well beyond in the next 5 to 10 years here.
Let's see.
Quality wasn't the same, yeah. Favorite freebie was the Fortnite photo op card. Yeah. I remember ending up with so many goodie bags. Yeah, I miss those days. We made bags.
Literally have the old Comic-Con, the
Warner
Brothers bags. We'd have multiple of those filled with stuff, and then so we would take it home and we would make a bag for our niece and our nephew and our neighbor and our friends and
like everybody
our
got
friends'
bags.
kids, and we
like
were
Santa
like
Claus.
splitting up the stuff with all these people, and that, I think probably where we started with like the free, having the like drops and prizes and stuff, because we'd have stuff and it's like, well, let's share it with everybody.
Yeah, and nowadays we have to buy stuff to do giveaways. Basically, like in the old days, it was like we had so much stuff we just gave stuff away, and now it's like, oh, we needed to buy stuff to do giveaways. So yeah.
Yeah, we don't have that.
I feel like as soon as we have the power to change what we don't like, I feel like it's downhill. I mean, for me, Comic-Con is still like my favorite thing in the world. So I love it so much. The challenge with everything, I think, is that it's so many different kingdoms. Like there's Marvel and there's DC and there's Netflix, and then not that Netflix was on the floor, but I'm just saying that there's all these different businesses, and they're all going to do things how they want to do things. And obviously, we'll see what the trends are in the near future here, but Comic-Con will be susceptible to all of them, including, as the commenter had a few minutes ago about AI art. I think announcing times to hand out swag really does cause problems with the overcrowding. Yeah, I just don't understand how it doesn't. I really do think Comic-Con booths overplan things now. I think they've kind of gotten caught up in a culture of press releases, and I think they give too much information these days. And I know a lot would disagree with that, but for me, I think a little spontaneity is a good thing, and I don't know. I don't know that we need to see every poster they're going to give away. I don't know that we need digital boards that say what exact time every single thing's going to happen. And again, the challenge with that is if we know that Hasbro's doing this at 9 and Mattel's doing this at 9:30 or 10, it's like everybody's kind of lining up when they're lining up, and they're not maybe paying attention to other things, and it just causes a lot more crowding sometimes.
Did Marvel give out any posters?
I did not see any exclusive posters. Like if you, what I'm thinking when that question comes, and I being correct, but it's like the classic MCU posters, which I loved and would spend so
Kind of
much
like
time
put
at the
them
booth.
together. They each day they'd
Oh,
give a
there's
different part of the big scene.
yeah, or when they would just do here's like the concept art of things. I mean, I was just looking at some of those posters because we have so many of those from like I want to say those went from like 2009 to 2015 or something like that. I mean, I remember some of that artwork for Guardians of the Galaxy was so incredible, and now it feels like not just now, it feels like it's been this way since pre-pandemic. I feel like it kind of shifted maybe 2017, 2016. Is there's a lot of like these are products that we have that you could probably go buy in the store, but here they are. But we used to get so many like exclusive Marvel T-shirts, and just we don't do as much with the Marvel booth anymore. Nicholas, thank you so much for the super chat. Very much we appreciate your support, and we are happy that some of our coverage helped you. Hopefully, thank you.
And then let's see, MetaZoo was horrible. That looked messy, but I didn't spend a lot
Yeah.
of time over there. I saw it when I was doing the live at the end. It was just lots of people around, so I'm not even sure what was going on there.
Yeah.
Um,
Tops was giving away shirts and socks. Oh, that's great. Yeah, we did not see that. I mean, we went by there several times, but never saw that. But that's a really good one. Have you seen Project K glimpse at Comic Con? We were in the Project K panel. We got more traction from Project K fans than anything we've ever like. We cover MCU in Hall H and it goes nuts, but nothing like what Project K. Like the amount of people that were interested in that and sharing that, it was like we would instantly post something and it would have like 12,000 views or something like that in a few minutes. It was crazy, but it looked fun. The panel was fun to be. It felt like we were part of like history being in the panel, and the movie looked really fun and interesting. Trailer, yeah. So excited about that. So 2024, we'll be keeping an eye out for that. Something else to look forward to.
yeah, we went more in depth on that. What day was that panel? Thursday?
Yeah, on the maybe 2 episodes ago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we talked about it in more depth, but
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, it was a very cool panel to be in. It really stood out, of course, this weekend with not so much stuff.
Favorite and least favorite offsites. What kind of offsites would you like to see next year? I think those kind of fit in. I know for me, like immersive theater type stuff is always my favorite. Like where you're in a world. Thinking back to something like Blade Runner is an all-time great.
City.
Purge City is an all-time great. I thought Dungeons and Dragons last year was pretty fantastic as well. This year, I really liked a lot. I mean, I really liked Interview with the Vampire a lot. I liked Hulu. I keep saying it, Anime from Hulu. I liked FX a lot. I always like FX a lot. It's a little more simple and straightforward than something like Interview with the Vampire, but I always enjoy it quite a bit. I think to me the one that had the most to it was definitely Interview with the Vampire for me in terms of like the theatrical side. It wasn't as scary as I would have liked, but I understand that sometimes you don't want scary. Like doing scary American Horror Stories may be different than doing an Interview with a Vampire. But and then least favorite, I guess the Vault for Hasbro, because it just wasn't much to it. It was just a story. I mean, they had a couple cool displays, but nothing much more. And it was a long walk, relatively speaking. The Haunted Mansion one was incredible. I mean, I guess so it's interesting how I mentioned because we always try like this is what it we went for a media like part of a party, and so it's very different. So I don't know, like we didn't access that as much during regular hours, so I'm like, is what how much of it was saying we got to see the film that added a lot to it. But riding the doom buggies through San Diego Gaslamp, the pedicabs in the doom buggies, is like going to be an all-time Comic-Con moment, an all-time like Parks and Cons moment. So really loved that one a lot.
Yeah, I think for me the favorite experience was the Haunted Mansion, and again, obviously it's tough to separate out the media part of it and the party part of it, but even the room itself at the activation
Yeah.
was beautifully done and had little I don't know, kind of jump scarish kind of things, but kind of the whole haunted mansion. I mean, the fact that they had hitchhiking ghosts kind of lingering throughout the
That's
gas
so
lamp
cool.
was cool. We had two friends that said that I don't I think they were both at Omni
Yeah.
maybe, but at different times they came out of the elevator and there was a hitchhiking ghost just
That's
standing
so
there.
cool.
I'm like, okay, that would have been awesome to see.
The other thing I love about that one is there wasn't a big press release weeks. I mean, it's tough because we like knowing the stuff and everybody gets excited and everybody gets a little scared when we don't hear if FX is coming or these things. So we do want to know it. But at the end of the day, to me, my favorite thing about Comic Con, whether it's outside stuff, inside stuff, is surprises. And I think that's where a lot of these booths or companies have started to kind of lose. They've become like overly corporate. Not that they weren't already corporate as these big, studios and stuff, but they've kind of lost a little bit of the surprise element. And I think it's why people love, a big part of why people love the Marvel panel in Hall H is there'll be surprises. There's always going to be surprises. That's what Feige and the team do. And so Haunted Mansion was a huge surprise. We stumbled upon that they were doing a build of any sort. Then, all of a sudden there's doom buggies. The pedicabs are converted over. What a great idea. They're playing the Haunted Mansion music. What a great idea. There's ghosts out on corners pretending to hitchhike. What a great idea. It was such great stuff out there. But even much more simple, Blue Beetle being out there with Reese's peanut butter cups with the cool themed little wrappers. It was interesting. We got a ton of traction on that when we posted that. And I think it was just because it was like a fun surprise. It was something we didn't know that was coming there. And so I hope in general, and this is not a Comic Con thing, this is the businesses going to Comic Con, but I just hope we can get a little bit more of the surprises outside of like the Marvel panel, is a little bit more of a surprise factor at booths, and keep some things, some secrets to get people excited so things aren't so overly planned, maybe.
Agreed, because that is a lot of fun. Scroll. So what was the exclusive? Was an exclusive back then compared to now? We kind of talked about it a
Yeah, I
bit,
mean, exclusives used to be you get them at the show or you don't get them. I mean, and now that's a tough thing if you're not at the convention and stuff. But back in those days, I mean, you didn't get those. I mean, maybe a couple would go up online or a handful, but yeah, it was very different now than these shared exclusives and things like that. I mean, now it's very rare for something only to be sold at the show. A Comic Con exclusive, you'll find, and this isn't the most brand new thing. I mean, there'd be Comic Con exclusive, things that when Toys R Us was still open showing up at them. But yeah, the big difference now is just a lot more things are kind of planned to also be sold online. So, any more questions? It's getting super late here, and we're getting to the hour mark, so I want to kind of start wrapping up here. We thank everybody for tuning in. So let's hit a couple last
I hope
one.
drone shows are here to stay for future cons.
Well said.
Agreed.
Well said. That was again a surprise. What a cool surprise. I mean, I don't know where the information came from, but we found out about it like I don't know a couple hours before. But it was just like there's gonna be a drone show. Like that's awesome. Like thank you Futurama. Thank you Hulu.
That was another
Disney
surprise thing that stuck out.
Yeah.
Or sorry, I was reading the comments,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like it
was
fun.
so cool.
It's like we were
So
in
cool.
FX, and it's like, oh yeah, it's going on. It's
Yeah.
so fun, and so many doing it that way. So many people got to enjoy it. It wasn't anything we had to line up for. It wasn't anything that people were. It was just like there. It was so awesome, and I gotta imagine drone shows are going to be here to stay for a while because they're still figuring out how to do them well.
Our mysteries of vendors in line for exclusives. Yep, when doors open makes it difficult. Yep,
That's
and
been the case for years.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Robert, thank you for the cover. Thank you, Robert, very much for the kind words there.
Yeah, there was several thank you. So,
oh, good for the Marvels. There was an exclusive poster for the Marvels. Very cool. I look forward to checking that out. Let's go. They did that. You guys are awesome. Pictures have been part of. Thank you for planning. Catch the creator glimpse and no, we did not. Very interested in that, but did not catch the glimpse of the director's directing panel. Yeah.
Is it like a Disneyland fireworks show? The drones. I think they've done drones at international Disney parks, but we haven't experienced it like Disneyland. But Universal uses drones for their what is it, Hogwarts or
Dark Arts.
Yeah. And stuff. So. Yeah, it's really cool. Or that wasn't a question; that was a statement. It's like a Disneyland fireworks show. So yeah, it is. It's a really cool thing. So
All right, so we are going to wrap up here. Thank you all. There's a lot more people that came in to listen this late at night. We thought it would just be the two of us, so thank you for doing that. We know people are very tired, whether at Comic Con or otherwise. If you were following Comic Con this close enough to want to be listening to us, you definitely are probably tired, even if you weren't going this year and watching from afar at home. So thank you for taking some time with us. We do appreciate it. We appreciate all the support during Comic Con and beyond. We will have lots of stuff on Comic Con, obviously, as we rev up to 2024 as well. More to come there. We have a lot of other stuff we cover additionally. If you're new to following along with us, we always pick up a lot of people during certain seasons. Comic Con is one, Halloween is another one. There's certain seasons where our numbers jump up quite a bit every year. And so if you are new to following along with us, we'll have a lot of other convention stuff coming, theme park stuff, holiday stuff, lots of different things to share. And we will, continue to follow along. Comic Con really is like where Parks and Cons started in a lot of ways. I guess it predated Parks and Cons, really, is what it comes down to. I think Parks and Cons was more born out of a theme park thing, but the whole idea of like covering stuff all came from San Diego Comic Con, so it's our biggest thing. And so we are excited about it. We'll follow along, and we'll be visiting a few times throughout the year, just looking for new restaurants, new places to eat, and then obviously
get our Comic Con fix.
Get our Comic Con fix, yeah. So with that said, we're going to wrap up this time. Again, Nicholas, thank you so much for the donation there. We do appreciate it. For everybody that donated this year, became patrons, etc., thank you so much for patrons. We'll be following up in our Mighty Networks feed there for Patreon, talking about kind of returning registration, because as soon as Comic Con's over, everybody starts thinking about getting back to Comic Con and like, okay, when's returning registration, when's open registration, all that. So we'll have more there to try to help everybody out with a team there. And so please keep an eye out for that survey coming in the next couple weeks there. So with that said, we'll let everybody go. Good night.
Good night.
Happy Comic Con. Thank you again. Until next time, we'll see you in line somewhere.